Okay, good evening. Thank you all for being here this evening. My name is Tim Boyd, I'm the Academic Dean. The purpose of this evening is to give you all an overview of the course registration process which the boys will be going through over the next several weeks. This is primarily going to be targeted at information for people who haven't gone through the process before. I recognize some of you have done already, but that'll be a refresher for that, but most of the information is going to be assuming this might be your first time going through it. A lot of it will be put on the slides up here. Tomorrow I will send these slides to everyone in case there's anything you miss or want to double check on. We are also recording this presentation. It'll also be posted on YouTube and sent around if you missed anything as well. This is actually slightly nerve-wracking because the tech department is not here, and they said they were going to show me how to do it earlier, and they made a big thing about, just come over to the theater, we'll show you. So I was stealing myself, and then Mr. McAllister sort of pointed at the camera and said, you have to press this button. That's it, which at first made me feel slightly offended, but now I'm just very, very nervous whether I press the right button or not, but I think we've got the right one. In any case, the basic structure of this evening, I'm going to give you just a brief overview of kind of the core elements of the process, and then each of our department chairs is going to give you a summary of the course progression in their departments and some of the things you might consider when making the choices for your sons going forward. And then once we're all done speaking, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions. We'll wait around here at the front for anyone who has a question, whether it's a general question about the process or an individual question that you might have about your son. This is also not a one-shot deal. If you listen to all this and then you get back to the parking lot and you realize now you have a question, please email any one of us, whoever you think the question should be directed to, and we'll be plenty of opportunities to answer over the next several weeks. So, first thing is just to make you familiar with the two core materials that your sons will be working with, which are the course selection sheet, which is this grid that you may have seen before. It's in the back of the workbook that they brought home. And then this course recommendation sheet. This is the color for the rising 9th graders, so current 8th grade. Each grade has a different color, but they all serve the same purpose. And the basic premise is that these sheets go together. The boys will need to turn both of these in to their advisors. The colored sheet is the one where the teachers are making recommendations for what classes to take next year. And then the grid is the one that you will fill out with your sons where you are listing what courses you want them to take next year. So they go together, these are the recommendations, and this is the sheet that you will fill those out on. Basic nuts and bolts when making the decisions for next year: make sure your son is signed up for at least 5 classes. He has the option of signing up for 6. Our general advice is sign up for 6 if you have a good reason for that 6th class, but don't feel any pressure to sign up for a 6th class just because you feel, well, I can do, so I need to fill up every space that I possibly can. So, good reasons include it's a subject they're particularly passionate about, or there's a subject in later years that this might be a prerequisite for. Those are all good reasons to take a 6th class, but boys shouldn't feel any pressure that there's somehow an expectation that they take 6, but they do need to take at least 5. Second is to make sure, this applies to this grid, that they have a parent or guardian signature. We want to keep parents part of this process. We want to be sure there's been a conversation with parents. Especially, this probably isn't affecting many of your sons, but as sons enter the 12th grade, they are very prone to make these decisions themselves and kind of airily say, yes, I've cleared that with mom and dad, they're fine with it. And we just want to make sure that's true, and we have the signature on the sheet before they turn it back in. And then finally, this sheet also tells you what the core graduation requirements are in each department. So it's worth using that just to plan out, not because the decisions you're making for next year are specifically committing you things for the years after that, but it can be helpful to be like, well, if I make this choice now, is that in any way interfering with what I might have to take in future years? And sometimes that's about making sure you get all the credits you need in each department. Sometimes it's about, there's this class I really want to take, and I need to make sure I have space to take that in later years, so how does that affect my choices now? So those are all things to keep in mind, and again, those are things that we can answer questions on, or your son's advisor can answer questions on if you're in any doubt about it. Key deadlines, only 3 of them to really keep in mind, and the boys are being told these during break either today, tomorrow, or Thursday. The first is next Thursday. So by next Thursday, all the teachers this week will fill out these recommendation sheets. By next Thursday, the boys should have brought these home to you, sat down with you to talk about what their options are for next year, fill out this sheet, and then by the 20th, take both of these sheets and they will give them to their advisor. That's kind of the initial stage of the process. About a week later, after the registrar has processed all of those sheets, each boy will receive a printout of their course selections, basically to confirm this is what you signed up for. They then have a further week to look at that, about a further week to look at it, show it to you, double check again, these are the classes I intended to take. It could be in that week they change their mind on something, or you change your mind on something. That's fine, you can still make changes at this time, but for 90% of people it'll be just checking, yes, this is what I expected, sign off, return, and give it back. This is considered the end of the regular selection process. But it's important to stress that doesn't mean it's the end of course registration altogether. What we're trying to get to the point of is having an initial set of course options for all 820 plus students so that we can start building a schedule and get expectation of teaching needs and so on. However, there are still opportunities to make changes. If, for example, your son signed up for 6 classes and then by the end of the spring you're beginning to think, I don't know, 6 may have been too many, maybe we should drop down to 5, you can absolutely still do that. We won't make that change then until the summer, but that's another opportunity to do that. Also very common is that your son is interested in taking an honors or an AP class and may currently be in a regular class, and the teacher is saying, well, you know, you're pretty close to what I think would be the level to take honors, but I want to be sure you're there, or I'm not sure you're quite there yet. Let's check again at the end of the year. And I'll talk about that in a moment as well, but that's a very common part of the process. So sometimes boys feel if I don't get signed up for honors right now, I can't take honors. That's not the case. Sometimes it'll be a situation where the teacher is just saying, I want to be sure your second semester is as strong as your first and that it's the right choice for you for next year, so we'll revisit that. Again, given that we're talking mostly here, I think, about students who are entering the high school, so rising 9th graders, I met with them this morning. The good news for rising 9th graders in this process is that there aren't too many choices. That, in a sense, is also the bad news for them. There aren't too many choices at this point, but there are far more choices later on down the line. The key choices they're basically facing, 2.5 sort of questions that they're going to consider. First of all, how many regulars or honors classes should they take? And this will vary on the student and the particular subjects they're interested in and so on, but that's a good question to be asking. What's the right balance of regular and honors classes? Should they take a 6th class? I've already mentioned that. What are the considerations you might think of for that? Are they passionate about it? Are they interested in it? And then perhaps critically, what to take as their 5th class. So there are 4 classes here that a 9th grader will automatically take at some level. English 1, Geometry, Biology, and Latin 2. A handful of exceptions where that might be different. They might be on a slightly more advanced math track, but basically this is going to be 95% of 9th graders plus will be taking those 4 classes. The choice comes down then to what's the 5th class going to be, and they have 3 main options. Is it going to be a modern language class? Is it going to be civics, which is a history class? Or is it going to be a visual and performing arts class? And there's a strong case to be made for any one of these 3 options, and you'll hear from the respective department chairs about things you might consider. But that's going to be the main question, along with regulars versus honors, that the boys are going to be facing going into the 9th grade. What should that 5th and or possibly 6th class be? So that should give you hopefully an overview of the kind of nuts and bolts of the process. I'm going to turn it over now to the department chairs, or I should say most of the department chairs, because Dr. Bailey unfortunately has to be home in quarantine at the moment, so I will be back here for a moment to fill in as the history department chair for this evening as well. But they're going to go through their various departmental offerings. It's actually very appropriate that we start with Mr. Moxley, because this, as you've hopefully noticed by now, the theatre is set up not for us, but for the junior school play, and the junior school play is How to Survive Shakespeare. And I don't think of any better guide, can't think of a better guide on how to survive Shakespeare than the chair of the English department. So Hayward's going to start us off with the next stage of the presentation.
I'm Hayward Moxley, and I chair the English department. And my piece of the puzzle is the simplest one. Your sons will take English every year, 9, 10, 11, 12, and there are 2 tracks, an honors track and a regulars track. The honors track leads to the AP senior year. And so our goal as the department is to get your sons placed in the correct track, regulars or honors. And if your son is a rising 9th grader, his 8th grade teacher will make that decision for him this month and place him either in honors or regulars. And some of the boys, some of your sons who are sort of on the edge of being in honors, or perhaps we'll wait till May to make that call. And then if your son doesn't get placed in the honors this year, as Dr. Boyd said, that's all right. In the 9th grade, if he performs well in English 1 regular, makes at least a 92 and has a recommendation of his teacher, he can move up into the honors track his sophomore year. That happens quite regularly. And since boys mature at different rates, frequently we have boys moving into the honors program even into the 11th grade year. So that's the English department's goal, is to get your son placed in the best track. Your input, of course, is welcome. You can email me, you can call me, and you can talk to me tonight as well after this presentation about your son and what his hopes are and so forth. And my name's Haywood Moxley, and I'd love to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Haywood. Next we have Daniel Paolicki from the Foreign Languages Department.
Good evening. As Dr. Boyd said, my name is Daniel Paolicki. I'm chair of the Foreign Languages Department. Behind me, you'll see the course offerings. One of the things I don't think he mentioned before is that for graduation requirements from MBA, students are required to take either 3 years of Latin or 2 years of Latin, which are required, and 2 years of a modern language. We are a department, we're largely an elective department. Students are required to take 2 years of Latin. That is a foundational course for the classic curriculum. But beyond that, all languages are electives. So I'm here to pitch why students should be taking a foreign language. First off, I want to tell you a little bit about our Foreign Languages Department and our methodology. We focus entirely on proficiency. And what does proficiency mean? Proficiency means, to steal a line from Dr. Boyd, the ability to use the language and interpret the language in spontaneous and unrehearsed situations. That means being able to communicate and interpret as opposed to knowledge about the language. I have lived in 5 different countries and traveled to many more, and never once, ever, in any of my experiences in other countries, did anyone ever ask me in a bar, restaurant, museum, or informal or formal gathering if I could conjugate the verb gustar in imperfect subjunctive. They've never asked me that. But what they did, what I was able to do is communicate with them, and I committed many mistakes. But I learned from those mistakes, and I inherently, just like your sons learned how to speak English when they were very little, that's the way we approach language learning. That has brought us a lot of success, especially in the last 5 or 6 years when all languages transfer that model. In many ways, we are ahead of the curve because most language programs don't follow that, even though the national language associations are kind of trying to push that. One of the things you'll observe from our modern language students is that they engage routinely in the language spontaneously outside of class. In the hallways, you can hear students speaking French, German, and Spanish. We have also multiple students, 12 this year that I counted, that are taking 2 languages, modern languages, at the intermediate or advanced level. And many are also taking advanced classics and modern languages. For instance, I had a student last year, or excuse me, there's actually a current senior this year, who is in AP Literature and the 5th year of Latin concurrently. We have several more that will be taking AP Spanish and AP Chinese next year, another one taking AP Spanish and Chinese 3 next year, and so on and so forth. And there's 12 students this year. We also had a former student who took AP Spanish and AP French his senior year, and then he felt so comfortable with the languages or his ability to learn languages, he deferred going to college for a year, went to Morocco to study Arabic, and that's how confident he is. So that's really our goal, is to get students to become proficient in the language as quickly as possible. That gives us students a lot of success, and since we've implemented this program 5 years ago for all languages, our mean average for all APs in all languages is 4.25. And just to give you another example, in one particular class over the past 7 years, there were 119 students who went through the AP program, and the mean average was 4.7 on the AP exam. So you can see that these students have a lot of success. It's not easy. It's a lot like practicing a sport. There's not so much that you can do at home. Most is engagement in the classroom. So when you when you want to decide what kind of language to take, it really should be a language that the student is passionate about. And one of the best ways I frame it is that if a student is not sure what language to take, I would ask the students, like, where would you like to visit most? What country are you most interested in visiting? If it's a Spanish-speaking country, take Spanish. If it's a German-speaking country, if it's Germany, take German. If it's French-speaking countries, take French, and so on. Because the student really has to put himself out there, and he has to be comfortable making strange sounds, and so he has to really want to be able to develop that proficiency. There is, as you can see, we offer AP in all languages. There is a pathway for all students to get to the AP level in the languages department, which means that it doesn't matter if you're in regulars or honors, you can get to the AP level in your respective language. However, the only way you can do that for all languages, or the easiest path to get there, is to start your freshman year, because all languages are, typically it's a 4-year pathway to get to AP. There are some exceptions where you can get to AP, such as Spanish. You can get there in 3 years for really high achieving students, but for the majority of students, it is a 4-year path. And I think that's all I have for now, but once again, my name is Daniel Paolicki. If you do have any questions about languages, please let me know. I'll be here afterwards, or you can just email me later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. So standing in for a moment for Dr. Bailey. So I am also a history teacher. I teach AP European History. And history is one of the choices that your sons, if they're entering the 9th grade, will have next year. But to talk just about the core classes that the history department requires and the sort of thinking and pedagogical strategy behind them. So history, you're required to have 3 credits in the high school, and they need to be 1 from each of 3 categories. And Dr. Bailey, when he put this slide together, very thoughtfully put them in different colors to indicate when in the progression they happen. So you need 1 from civics or social studies, 1 from US history, and 1 from world history. Now, US history and world history almost automatically will happen in 10th and 11th grade. Everyone takes US history in some form in the 10th grade. Almost everyone takes European or world history in the 11th grade. A handful of seniors defer it, but basically we're still talking 95% plus. So those 2 are pretty set. So the question, in a sense, is going to be, where is that 3rd course going to come from, and when are you going to take it? And you have 2 main options. You can take the civics class in the 9th grade, or you can take one of the others, the US Gov, Comp Gov, Econ, Gov Econ, or Senior Seminar in your 12th grade. Sometimes you can take one of those classes in the 11th grade as well. You can double up on your history there, but that's essentially the choice that your boys are facing. And our overall goal in the history department is to kind of build up their analytical and writing skills. So although it is, a sort of traditional survey course in content, the focus is supposed to be less on, can they leave here, just as Senor Paolicki's never been asked to conjugate a verb perfectly in a Spanish bar, they're not going to be expected to show up, at the Louvre years from now and list all the French kings in order they appeared, but the idea would be they might see a painting there and say, I know how to analyze this. We learned this in class and how it relates to the context of the era and so on. It's very nice for me occasionally to hear back from students when they see something, years after they graduated, and they recognize some theme or topic we talked about and how it relates to that in history. So the goal, even though it's a content survey-based course, is to develop those analytical thinking skills and writing skills as well. I also had a student who complained that they had to write essays in my class, saying, this isn't an English class, why do we have to write essays? And sort of tried to gently explain that essays can apply to multiple subjects more than just English, but that's also part of what we are trying to do. A big question you might all face for next year is that because history is elective in the 9th grade and required in the 10th, there is a question about what is the path into AP US history in the 10th grade. And the important thing to clarify here is the answer is there are 2 paths in. One of them involves history itself, so civics is a kind of a class you can take, and if you do well in civics, you will qualify for AP US History, but it is not required to take civics to qualify for AP US History. You can also qualify by taking a modern language along with Latin, and that makes you no more or less qualified. You don't have to score higher grades in those classes to qualify for AP US History, but you do have to take 2 language classes to do that. So it's Latin and a modern language is one path, civics is the other. But it's important to be clear, if your son has a real interest in civics, or really wants to take as many history classes as possible, that's a great reason to do so. But if he's thinking, I need to take it because it's the only way to get into AP US History, otherwise I would wait until senior year to take it, that's not correct. He has another path into AP US History in the 10th grade if he takes a modern language along with Latin. So that's essentially the core progression in the history department and the main options for your son to think about in terms of next year, and also just a little bit about the thinking behind how the classes in the department are structured. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Davidson from the math department.
Hi. As Tim said, I'm Mike Davidson. I'm the chair of the math department. What you see on the board is what about 90% of MBA students, what they go through. They'll take Algebra 1, either regular or honors in the 9th grade, Algebra 1 in the 8th grade, Geometry 9th grade, Algebra 2 10th grade, College Algebra and Trigonometry in junior year, and then it's usually senior year when things get interesting. Most students in Honors College Algebra and Trigonometry will continue on to AP Calculus AB. Most students in regular college algebra and trigonometry continue on to calculus/statistics, which is a first semester calculus, second semester statistics, non-AP class. Of course, there's other tracks you can take. That's about 90% of students. The occasional student might be a year ahead. So if you have a rising 9th grader as your son, and he's currently taking Algebra 1 as if he's taking geometry as an 8th grader, he's a year ahead on the track. And if he's on that track, he can either break it up by taking AP Statistics as a solo course at some point during the track and still finishing senior year with an AP class, AP Calculus, AP Statistics, or AP Computer Science, or he might be one of the few students who makes it to multivariable calculus in the senior year. So if you're a typical track, if your son is currently on this track of Algebra 1 in the 8th grade, they'd be looking for Geometry, Algebra 2, College Algebra Trig. If they're currently in honors, I would right now sign them up for AP Calculus AB unless they're really very top of their class, and that can be kind of revisited later, but it's about the top 25% of honor students take AP Calculus BC. If your son's currently in regular, I would sign him up for these regular classes and currently sign him up for CalcStat in the senior year. If your son's interested in doubling up, that can happen. A common second class is AP Statistics if it's not done on its own. Students will often take AP Calculus AB and AP Statistics both in their senior year. We also have 2 AP Computer Science classes, AP Computer Science Principles and AP Computer Science A. They're both challenging AP classes. AP Computer Science A is a more challenging computer science class. It's a Java-based computer science course. That's usually taken as a second class. Very rarely someone will take that as their only class in the math department, but usually it's a second math class someone takes. You'll see that there's an asterisk next to Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and College Algebra and Trigonometry, because those are your 4 required math classes at MBA. However, unless it's a very special case, I do not recommend taking senior year off from math. I can think of one student in my 13 years here that we recommended that for. Typically, that's a bit of a red flag for colleges. Unless there's a really, really good reason not to take a math class, I would take a math class in your senior year, and right now be planning on taking a math class in your senior year. In terms of placement, if your son is currently in a regular level class and they'd like to move up to an honors or AP class in the next year, we look for 3 things. That's a 92 or higher, the teacher's recommendation, and department recommendation. And by department recommendation, what I mean is at the end of the year, I and the rest of the math department get together and look at the close call students and talk about them and talk about whether it's a good placement to move them up to honors or if it'd be a better fit to keep them in the regular level course. The one interesting placement is from Geometry to Algebra 2. A better predictor of success in Algebra 2 is usually Algebra 1. So if your son's going into Algebra 2, we look at both the performance in Algebra 1 and Geometry to see what will make the most sense for Algebra 2. If your son is currently in honors or AP and wants to stay on kind of the honors AP track, we normally look for an 80 or higher. Sometimes a teacher will see a student in the low 80s and say, I'd really think you might have more success dropping down to a regular level. But again, those close call cases we look at as a department at the end of the year, and I'll email out people who are borderline cases where we weren't sure what the placement would be, and I'm happy to talk about those close call students with you if your son is one of those, either late in the year or over the summer. And if you're in any math class, be it honors or regular, and you want to take a regular level class, typically that's totally fine. You may have a teacher who encourages your son to stay in honors because they think they may have a lot of talent in the subject and they'd be better off staying in honors, but typically there's no requirement to stay in regular or to drop down to a regular level math class. So just to reiterate right now, this is the most common track, and if your son is currently in regular, I would right now sign them up for CalcStat in the senior year, first semester calculus, second semester statistics. If your son is currently in honors, I'd sign them up for AP Calculus AB. Of course, there are exceptions, but probably best to talk about the 10% one-on-one. So either after this or via email, I'm happy to answer your individual questions. Again, I'm Mike Davidson, Math Department Chair. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Next up, Travis Barclay from the Science Department.
Good evening. Like Dr. Boyd said, my name is Travis Barclay. I'm the chair of the Science Department. As you guys can see behind me, there's the normal science course sequence. If your son is currently in 8th grade, he will take biology as a 9th grader. That'll either be regular or honors biology. If he's currently in earth science honors, more than likely he'll transition into honors biology. Kind of like Mr. Davidson said, if your student is in a regular earth science course, it probably makes sense for him to move into or just continue on in that regular track. We'll talk a little bit about expectations of the science department here in a little bit. So biology or honors biology as a 9th grader, that's pretty standard or straightforward. In 10th grade, they will move into chemistry or honors chemistry, kind of the same type of thing we talked about moving from 8th grade into 9th grade. And in the 11th grade is where students start having a choice of where they can go. We have regular physics as just kind of that continuation of the regular course, which is still a really good course. We have AP Physics 1. AP Physics 1 is an algebra-based college-level physics course. It's algebra-based. And students that are currently in regular chemistry can move into AP at that level. So your son's junior year is the first opportunity for them to take an AP course in the sciences, and that could be AP Physics 1. AP Physics C, as you can see behind me, is a calculus-based college-level physics course, and in order to qualify to be in AP Physics C as a junior, you need to be coming from honors chemistry. So if your son is currently, makes the track and makes it in honors chemistry, he is able to then take AP Physics C in his junior year. After that, it opens up quite a bit in the 12th grade. As long as you take physics, and once again, if you're in the regular track, at that point you can take any AP class. We offer a slew of AP classes you can see behind me. AP Chemistry, AP Biology, Environmental Science AP, all the AP physics that are out there. AP Physics 2 is basically the continuation of the material that you would take in a first-year algebra-based physics course. So what the College Board did was they said 1 semester of college-level algebra-based physics would be the entire year. That's AP Physics 1. The second semester of college-level physics would be AP Physics 2. So if your son takes AP Physics 1 as a junior and then takes AP Physics 2 as a senior, he would have 1 full year of college-level algebra-based physics. We do have a human anatomy and physiology course, which is an honors level course, and then of course they can take science research. One thing I do want to point out at the very bottom of that slide is that if your son is currently in a regular science course and makes that 92 with a teacher recommendation, he is able to move up into the honors track. In order to stay in honors, he needs to maintain an 85 in his honors or AP course in order to continue that on. And as long as he makes it to honors chemistry in his sophomore year, he is able to take AP Physics C, which is our highest level physics course, as a junior. However, that does not preclude him from taking Physics C as a senior if he finds that he's interested in physics after taking regular physics or AP Physics 1 in their junior year. Thank you. Once again, Travis Barclay, and what will be here after this. Thank you.
Okay, finally we're going to hear from Dr. Fuller. I should note that the rest of us, we normally do this in FEFA, so the rest of us came into this and looked around and thought, well, this is really unfamiliar space for us to be speaking in, but Dr. Fuller, as a director of theatre, for him this feels very natural. So this is his home. So he is going to close us out with the Visual and Performing Arts Department.
Thank you, Tim. I thought about going from different boxes for different sections, which would be very fun for me, but probably very confusing for you, so I don't think I'll try it. The curriculum in the Visual and Performing Arts is structured to nurture young men as artists so that they're prepared for further artistic study in college if they so choose, and certainly to hone their creative skills and help them problem solve and collaborate effectively no matter what field of study they pursue. As Dr. Boyd said, I'm Cal Fuller and the Department Chair of Visual and Performing Arts, and I have some quick guidelines for high school registration in the 3 different areas of artistic study. To make sure I'm going in the right direction, left or right for you. First, the visual arts. Studio 1 is the first level and prerequisite for all other courses in the arts sequence. It is strongly recommended that young artists begin their study in 9th grade when possible, especially if they are considering continuing to the AP level as upperclassmen. Next, theater, the one that I'm the most familiar with. Theater arts is a first level high school course and is the prerequisite for studio theater, the advanced course for seniors ready to write and direct their own plays. Finally, music. The Big Red Chorus is the first level high school course and a prerequisite for all other choirs. So rising freshmen interested in singing will sign up for this class. Auditions for upper level choirs will happen in the next few weeks, and before your sons officially register for one of those particular classes. Similarly, the high school bands and the chamber choir require instructor approval and an audition. Again, those auditions will take place in the coming weeks prior to registration. In fact, I saw in the announcements today that the high school bands have their deadline for recordings into the teachers. I think it's the 14th, so this Friday. So that they're already proceeding with that process. And I'm sure if your son is interested in choir or in orchestra, that information will be made available very soon too. We will adjust what we need to in terms of registration as we get that information from their auditions. Finally, AP History and AP Music Theory are open to sophomores, juniors, and seniors with approval of the instructor. Art history can be taken for art or history credit. We know that navigating registration for your son can be challenging, and there's a lot of information up there about 3 different areas of art, and we look forward to getting to know your young artists in the classrooms, in our studios, and in rehearsals next year. Let me know again, I'm Cal Fuller. Let me know, email me. If I don't know the answer to a music or visual arts question, I know who to ask and where to find them. So let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.
Okay, so thank you to all the department chairs. Just a few quick closing thoughts, and then we're all going to stick around here in various parts of this set for any individual questions you may have for us. But again, especially if we're talking here about rising 9th graders, when it comes to their core classes and the question about honors versus regulars, the main thing I would suggest to keep in mind is what is the right balance. You're looking for that kind of Goldilocks measure here. There's a temptation sometimes for boys to think, I have to take honors in everything. Everywhere I possibly can, I need to take it if I'm qualified. That can sometimes leave them overloaded and not enjoying themselves and not doing as well as they might do otherwise. Similarly, there are boys who are like, well, honors sounds like it might be a little bit tough. I'd rather just stick with a safe, all regulars options, even though I could probably do some honors. And they're selling themselves a little short in a different way where they might need to be a little prompted, well, try a couple. What are the subjects you're most interested in? Try pushing yourself a little bit in those. So that's what I would suggest for the core classes. And for the 5th/6th class, follow their interests. They are not going to go wrong on that 5th or 6th class. They're not going to put themselves in a box where they can't get out of it later if they follow what they're interested in. If they are truly interested in history, then civics would make sense. If they have a passion for languages, then languages is going to be a good option. If they've always had an interest in some form of the arts, that is going to be a great choice for them. So on that 5th or 6th class, let their interests and their passions guide what that choice is going to be. So that concludes the kind of formal part of all this. Thank you again for being here this evening. We will be down here ready to talk to any of you if you have questions that we can help you with. If you have questions you'd like to reach out to us about tomorrow, by all means, email any one of us. We'll be glad to talk with you. Thanks.